Quasi here, and in this video, I want to talk to you about surrender and really why most people misunderstand this, why it's so difficult to surrender and let go, and how to truly internalize it in such a way that you constantly live from a place of surrender. And goal achievement becomes much easier because you don't keep building up these unconscious resistances. I really want you to stick around to the very end of this video because this is an epiphany that I've had that's allowed me to live from a state of perpetual surrender. Okay, so by the end of this video, I'm going to share with you the 3 keys to help you do the same in your life. Before I begin this video, I want to quickly announce that a couple of spots have opened up for the free one-to-one consult with me and my team for the Reality Mastery program. Make sure you wait around until the end of the video for the announcement on that. And with that, let's get started. So in this video, I want to talk to you about the concept of surrender and why it is so difficult to do and why we tend to fall unconscious to it. Now, what I want to share with you is that all of us are run by our past events, okay? So most are run by the past events that have happened in our lives and also how we've internalized these events, okay? So these events and our attitudes towards them is what determines how they start to show up in your life right now. So to give you an example, if a traumatic event has happened in the past, more often than not, we've dealt with it by suppressing it because it was too strong to experience, too strong to face. So we try to push it under the surface to not confront it. And as we live our lives, this suppression leads to repression. Okay, so I also want to share with you the 4 levels of understanding how to deal with this karmic structure. Okay, and what I mean by a karmic structure is essentially that which influences your life right now. Everything that you're experiencing right now is just an undoing of the past karma that has gone on. Karma doesn't mean what goes around comes around. In Sanskrit, it literally translates to action, okay? Whether this be action in the sense of physical doing or your thoughts or your emotions, whatever you feel, it forms this karmic structure, okay? And this karma is the only tie that keeps your etheric body to your physical body. And the fastest way to undo karma is to live in this physical realm, okay? This is getting a little bit too esoteric, but I'm gonna make sure you understand this completely, okay? So this internalization of events from the past determines your karmic structure. What do I mean by that? Okay, this is what I mean. There is both positive karma and negative karma, right? If you do something good for someone, it's going to come back around to you. If you perceive an event that has happened in the past to be a positive event, then the corresponding lifelines that will unfold for you will also follow that positive trajectory. So let me give an example of this. Let's say you got bullied in the past, right? And you said, oh, it's a good thing I got bullied because now I can be more charismatic and more confident and go through hardship easier. So now to this neutral event of bullying, you've put a positive event on it, right? So the corresponding events that unfold will also follow the positive trajectory. On the other hand, let's say you put a negative meaning to it. You say, oh shit, I got bullied and now I'm damaged, I'm ruined. So you put now a negative meaning onto it. When you do that, then the corresponding lifelines that unfold also follow that negative trajectory. Okay? So what I'm meaning to say by this is exactly what karma is. How you've internalized this event. Okay, what attitudes you've had towards that past event, that traumatic event that's happened. So your internalization of this event determines the karmic structure and how the corresponding lifelines unfold. Now the key thing to know here is that most of us are unconsciously internalizing these events. We're just soaking it up from our environment, so to speak. Okay, whatever society tells you, society says that this is good and that's bad, so you really absorb that like a sponge because you're asleep most of the time, right? So because of an unconscious internalization, this karmic structure is largely out of our control, right? This leads to the argument of fate versus, reality creator model. Is this fate or do I have the control to create this? Of course you do. But it's just about waking up and consciously choosing that, right? So I really want to share with you the 4 levels of internalization that is going to make sense for you, and the highest level of all. So the lowest level of all, okay, level 1, let's call it, is repression. What do I mean by that? This is suppression, but it's unconscious. Okay, it's been so deeply embedded that it's starting to show up in your life and you don't even know where it's stemming from, unless you start to, dig deep within your psyche. Okay, something that's repressed is maybe some event that's happened in the past that you've had some feelings towards, and you never really dealt with those feelings. You've just kept it under the bay, and now it's haunting you and influencing your life every single step of the way. Maybe it's a relationship that you've had with your dad that's also affecting the relationships that you have with men in your life. Okay? Maybe it's something abusive, something traumatic from the past. Maybe it's the event of losing money that prevents you from taking the risks that you need to take in order to become successful with your business. Okay? But all of these have largely become repressed. That's level 1 of internalization, the lowest level of all. The level above that is suppression. Okay? Suppression is something that you consciously chose. You consciously choose at first to keep it under the bay. And it's more like you didn't even consciously, there's a level of unconsciousness to suppression as well, because you want to get away from it, because it's so overwhelming, you just want to escape it. And that's when you fall into this trap of it becoming repressed. As you keep suppressing something over time, what happens is eventually it gets repressed. Because now you're no longer trying to associate with it, and it gets deeply rooted in your subconscious, and it starts to affect you, your actions, your attitudes, the predominant thoughts that you have. Why should human beings have negative predominant thoughts, right? There's a reason behind that. It's because of how you've been conditioned. It's because of how what you've been entertaining unconsciously as you've grown up, and also based on how unconsciously you've been absorbing things around you. Okay? So level 2 is suppression. Now this is where we hit the neutral level, because once you go above suppression, it leads to expression or projection. Okay? Let's call this expression. What do I mean by this? Let's say a negative event happens to you. Now you are angry and you start to act it out, and you act out to your colleague, right? What that essentially does is it lets off the energy behind that negative feeling a little bit, but it suppresses the rest of it, okay? Because anger is projection. You start to look for what has influenced your feeling state. You bring that hypothesis onto it. So let's say you've been really tricked in a business deal, right? And you've lost a lot of money from that investment, and now you're like, shit, well, all people of this race are bad. And you start to project that because you've had this one event that's happened. Now you start to bring that bias into future business deals. But who knows? Just because that's happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen again. So instead of coming with an open mind, that sort of colors the lens that you view your reality with. And as a result, you start to attract more of those events, because now you're looking for where you're going to get tricked. Okay, this is the insanity behind it. So expression is you get angry towards it, and now you look for more and more of it. So when you express your anger, people think it's good to do that. It is, because it's much better than suppressing your anger and then eventually it going to becoming repressed and it just coming out. Because what happens when you suppress anger or feeling such is that they will always find a trigger to show up in your life. Being stuck in traffic shouldn't anger anyone. No event has the power to anger anyone unless you're an angry person within anyways. And the only way you become an angry person is when these feelings get so unconsciously suppressed and then eventually repressed that it becomes a part of you and you're not even able to see it, right? So that's not the best way to deal with feelings either, because when you express something, you let a part of the energy out, but then the rest of it gets suppressed and repressed, okay? This is very, very crucial to understand. when you express your anger by screaming and shouting at someone, you're projecting that out into the world as well. But also more than that, you get rid of, let's say, 60% of the feeling, but 40% of that then goes into being suppressed and repressed. Okay? What is the best thing to do of all? Okay? What is above level 3? Level 4 is just pure surrender. Now, what do I mean by that? Surrender is when you let out 100% of that energy without projection, without suppression, without repression. Okay? This is when you undo 100% of that energy. Because in life, every single thing wants to experience more freedom, more varying degrees of freedom. It wants to go to more entropy. When you have this feeling within you and it remains suppressed, what happens is it forms an inhomogeneity in the field of the universe. This feeling wants to get dissolved, but you're not letting it get dissolved because you're holding on to it. Right? There's a secret payoff that's happening. When you feel angry, you can justify some things in your life. When you feel sad and you feel like a victim, you can justify some things in your life. Like, that business didn't succeed because, this event happened. It's okay. You give yourself permission to feel this way, right? You give yourself permission to hold on to it. And you don't see the detriment that it's causing you. The ego doesn't see that. The most powerful thing you can do for yourself is really just surrender that feeling. And how do you surrender? That's the big question, right? So essentially, surrender is when you completely live into and experience that feeling, witness it fully, to the point where the energy behind that feeling starts to get more and more spread out and dissolved out into the world. Okay? We're going to discuss more of this in the 3 keys afterwards. But for now, I want you to keep in mind the 4 levels of internalizing these feelings. Okay, so now I want to also discuss with you what the biggest pitfall is that most people face when they try to, internalize feelings. Anytime something happens, our first response is to escape it and not confront it. Biggest pitfall, quotation, let me get my mind off this. My mind off this. Right? So anytime anything happens, you will do anything to help you get your mind off this. Meaning, you want to escape it. You want to suppress it. You don't want to experience it. Right? And how we do that is, okay, let me just eat this food. Let me just watch TV. Oh, God, that anxiety doesn't feel good. Let me try to do a meditation to get rid of this anxiety. Oh, let me try to do this and do that. You're still stuck in doing. You're trying to do something, trying to get rid of that feeling. That's absolute insanity. You're doing from the same place of being. Who you are hasn't fundamentally changed. You haven't really dealt with it at the being level, but right now you're just trying to keep that feeling and you're trying to do different things just as a form to escape that, right? This is something that took me a really long time to figure out because my first response to something that makes me anxious would be, oh God, what's the next thing I can take to make me a little less anxious? And then you turn to smoking weed and the drugs and things that give you a relief rather than actually solve the problem. Anything that you can do that escapes, that brings your focus away from what's going on is just a form of escape. It's just a form of relief. It's just slapping on a band-aid on the problem without getting to the actual wound that's causing it. And rest assured, this is going to haunt you in the future. If you don't have full control over your internal state of being, you let part of it become unconscious. Your unconscious will always start to dictate your fate. Okay? Now I want to share with you the 3 keys that's going to make this implementable for you in your life. I want you to pay close attention to this, okay? Following on from the biggest pitfall that we discussed, we try to escape it and we try to do surrender and do letting go as a meditation, as a hypnosis, as an affirmation, because we're trying to, the core intention behind that is that I want to escape this, okay? So when you focus on escaping, you're focusing on the negative, right? You focus on escaping the negative instead of embracing the positive. This is so crucial to understand. It's kind of like being on the highway. You look at that car next to you, you focus on avoiding it. The more you focus on avoiding that car, the more you move towards that car. Why does that happen? Because reality doesn't care about the nature of your thoughts. It cares about the content of your focus. Whatever you focus on, whether you focus on avoiding it, whether you focus on moving towards it, life will just move you towards it. It's as simple as that. When you focus on escaping this negative feeling and your efforts towards letting go come from a place of escape, rest assured you're going to move towards it. Okay? So the first and foremost thing for you to understand is what is the core intention behind wanting to let go and wanting to surrender. Okay? What is the intention behind surrender? What is your intention behind surrender? Is it to get away from something or is it to get towards something? The most powerful thing you can do is to mentally make a note to yourself that I want to surrender because I want to experience the highest truth. Okay? I want to experience the highest good, the highest state of consciousness. Instead of I want to get away from this low state of consciousness. I want to get away from the anxiety. This is absolutely key. When you make that intention, your efforts towards surrender become much more powerful. You start to move towards the positivity rather than towards the negativity. Okay? That is number one. Please keep that in mind. Number two, don't try to let go. This is counterintuitive because the letting go process is so intricate. It's something that is so subtle and so nuanced that if you try to let go, you're automatically going to, again, try to do something, right? You're going to try to escape it. So instead of trying to let go, the most powerful thing to do is to let it be instead. How do you let it be? Okay, I'm going to give you an example that really makes sense of this. Letting go is kind of like you're trying to get rid of it. Letting it be is just embracing it. You embrace this feeling of anxiety. You get deeper into this feeling of anxiety. You get so deep into it. You immerse yourself in it. You're no longer afraid of it. The anxiety no longer runs you. You've embraced it. When you let it be and you ask for more of it, what happens next is very, very powerful. This feeling no longer is something that's unconscious, but rather you're consciously experiencing it. And that's what lets the energy behind it dissolve. Okay? This is what you need to keep in mind. Whenever you think about trying to let something go, your mind is automatically in escape mode. Instead of that, turn right to that fear, turn right to that anxiety, and move even more towards it. Ask for more of it. This is exactly how you turn that circle, that cycle that's been happening in your life, into a straight line. Okay, this is what causes forward movement in your spiritual evolution. This is what causes forward movement in your business. This is what causes forward movement in your personal life. Because all of these things, they're just a deeper principle that start to reflect out into all areas of your life, right? So always keep this in mind. Whenever you think about letting go, just remind yourself that letting go is futile. You can't try to let go. It's just something that you embrace and you no longer let it haunt you and control you. Kind of like that boss that keeps screaming at you, You no longer fear the boss screaming at you, but rather you just know that he will and you accept it. And when you accept it, you're able to more freely do your work and take the sort of creative risks necessary for the business to ultimately move forward, So always keep that in mind. And number three, this was also something that was key for me to understand. Just because you're in a bad place doesn't mean all life has to stop. Because the process of, it's not like, okay, I'm going to surrender everything and then I'm going to get to work. Because that always becomes an excuse and you always keep up. You always start to look for the next negative thing as an excuse for you not to do the work. This becomes the greatest excuse for procrastinating on your dreams. Okay, persist in what's necessary. Okay, despite of what's going on. Persist in what's necessary and understand that surrender is ongoing. It's not going to happen overnight. Like you can't just surrender a feeling overnight. It could take days. It could take years, months. Because this is years and years of conditioning that you're undoing. But if you start to confront these feelings more and more, and you start to embrace them, you start to accept them, you start to immerse yourself in them, you let them be, and you hold your attention towards them, what happens is slowly the feelings behind it, the concentration dissipates, right? So you can still do that while you're doing what's necessary for your business to grow, right? If you look at some of my videos that I made back in May, I would probably say that that whole month I was feeling anxious, but I still did what was necessary anyways with that feeling, within me, that pit feeling within me, and I just surrendered it. I just put my attention onto it. I let it be. And you persist in what's necessary. That is the most effective way to go about it. And remember, when it gets too overwhelming, sometimes you need to make use of expression. You need to talk about it with someone. There's nothing wrong with that. But most of the time, predominantly, you want to just experience it, let it be without projecting it out. Because when you keep talking about it and you keep complaining about it, it just becomes a topic of gossip and it just moves it around, it propagates it more and more. It's not doing anyone a service. Your state of consciousness starts to affect other people as well. So with that, I conclude this video. I sincerely hope this was helpful and I hope this made sense. Let's do a quick recap of it. Okay. Today we talked about surrender. And really what I want you to take away from this video is understanding the 4 different levels of which you can internalize and how to internalize it. Okay. So we talked about how we're run by these past events and our unconscious internalization of it. Right? What you call as yourself right now is partly consciously internalized, partly unconsciously internalized. Okay? And remember that how you internalize something determines your karmic structure. If you put a positive meaning onto it, you're going to move to positive lifelines. If you put a negative meaning onto it, you're going to move to negative lifelines, and the corresponding events that happen in your life are also going to be negative. Right? And the 4 different levels of internalization are as follows. Suppression and repression are both unconscious. Level 1 is repression when it really goes to your unconscious and you have no control over it. At level 2, you still have some control over it because you can choose to not suppress it, but rather at least express or at best surrender it, right? Expression is when you project it out into the world and you start to show your anger, you start to punch punching bags and incessantly talk about and complain about your situation, which lets the energy behind it out a little bit, but some of it also gets suppressed and repressed. The best thing to do is surrender it. And by surrender, letting it be instead of trying to let go and trying to do something. Okay? The biggest pitfall that we all get into is we try to escape it immediately. Whenever we feel anxiety, we want to do something to get rid of it. We want to do the meditation that makes us feel good. But again, remember that all of these things are just becoming a patch for it. Because you can't just, unless and until you can live your whole life as a meditation, that 20 minutes is just going to be a patch on the problem. Okay? So the biggest pitfall is, let me get my mind off this. Don't do that. Experience it. Turn towards that feeling. Don't escape the fear, because the fear will always haunt you. If you escape the fear now, it's going to come back 10 years from now. It's going to come back a few months from now. Okay? And the 3 keys we talked about to really use this is, number 1, make the intention. Okay? Set the correct intentions. And what I mean by setting the correct intentions is understanding, are you moving and trying to move away from something? Or are you actually trying to move towards something? Are you trying to escape this negativity and this anxiety and this fear and this doubt and worry? Or are you trying to move towards the highest truth? Okay? Mentally make that note within yourself. Number 2, don't try to let go. Don't try to do anything. The more you immerse yourself in doing something, the more you're going to run away from it. But instead, internalize it. Turn within and let it be. Immerse yourself in it. Observe it without judging it, without labeling that feeling, without moralizing it. Don't even label it as a negative thought. Once you've done that, it's already taken on that form. It's just a feeling. It's just a thought. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's just information. It's just data. Okay? Just let it be. Don't engage yourself in it, but let it be, observe it, watch how it changes. Okay? Number 3, persist in what needs to be done anyways. Okay? If you've set about on a mission, don't let this stop you. The process of surrender is continual. You can still observe it and do what's necessary anyways. And with that, I conclude this video. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope this was helpful. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Hit that little bell there so you're notified of any new video that I put out. And again, as I mentioned before, the free one-to-one consult with me for the Reality Mastery program is now open. If you're interested in signing up for that, make sure you click on the link in the description below. And who we work with are typically as follows. First of all, professionals who are looking to take their careers to the next level, or even, really transition out, start up their own businesses, and they've tried incessantly, they've tried all the strategies, tools, tactics, and they're seeing that it's not a skill set, it's not a strategic problem, but rather something internal that's keeping them stuck here. They're not in the correct alignment for their businesses to thrive, okay? People who are already existing entrepreneurs who are stuck at a certain revenue level in their businesses, and they see that they keep hitting this ceiling. And this ceiling isn't a tactical strategic ceiling, but rather an internal one. Something internal that's holding them back and keeping them here. Okay? If that sounds like you, make sure you take advantage of this opportunity to sign up for the consult. Let's see how we can help take you to the next level. Okay, and also the free Facebook group is open for you to take advantage of. The link for that is in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time. Peace.